will be Roger Millar of Smart Growth America. Mr. Millar is the Vice President of Smart Growth of America. He is Director of the SGA's Leadership Institute, which provides technical assistance to state and local government, and Director of the National Complete Streets Coalition. Over his 30-year career, he has held leadership positions in the public and private sectors. Projects in which Roger has played a leadership role, particularly the development of Portland, Oregon's Pearl District and the Portland streetcar, are seen as national models. Roger is a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers, a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and a certified floodplain manager. He is past president of the Oregon section of the ASCE and of the Montana Association of Planners. He is a graduate from the University of Virginia. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce and have come up forward Roger Millar, Smart Growth America.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to set my timer so I don't drone on. Hi, I'm Roger Millar. I'm Vice President of Smart Growth America. I do work all over the country, but it's kind of fun to tell the Portland story. I don't get to tell it often enough. Some people say I talk about Portland too much, and those of you who are planners probably get very tired of hearing of Portland, but you're going to get to hear about it one more time. What I wanted to do is talk about what we did in the Pearl and with the Portland streetcar. I was the project manager for the development of the Portland streetcar project. I was also the project manager for the master planning of the River District, which is now called the Pearl. I want to talk about the regional context of what we were doing, the history of the area, a little bit about the vision thing, and then the land use and transportation connection, how the streetcar fit into all the stuff that was going on, and some results that we've had. I work for Smart Growth America, so I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about smart growth. I like to define it right up front so that it isn't defined for me. I do not work for the United Nations. I did not get here on a black helicopter. And I own property, and I actually drive a car. I drive a truck. Anyway, so smart growth to us is strategies for building urban, suburban, and rural communities with housing and transportation choices. And those choices are approximate to jobs and shopping and schools and all the things that we do. Smart growth strategies are designed to support thriving local economies and protect the environment. So we're the choice people. Had people tell me that providing people with choice takes away their freedom. That's not what we do. We provide choice. Here I am in Michigan earlier in the week. I hear a lot about smart growth. I travel all over the country, all over the world actually, talking about smart growth, and I hear a lot of stuff. I hear that smart growth is ugly, which is why I went to the Cinque Terre for my honeymoon. We have no history with it in North America. We've never lived in compact urban form. No one would want to live there like this small smart growth community, Aspen, Colorado. It just doesn't work here like in the Pearl, so shut up and drive. The auto-centric model of land use and transportation, it's always been that way. It'll always be that way. Let's go build a freeway. That's not the case. Anyway, the regional context, when we talk about what was happening in Portland, and you guys are talking about the same stuff in Michigan, when you invest money, when you make planning decisions, you do it in a context. And the Pearl and the streetcar happened in a regional context. Portland was looking at a problem of growth. When I moved to Portland in 1982, we had 20% unemployment, we had net outmigration, and the majority of downtown Portland was surface parking lots. Real attractive place. But we saw growth coming, we turned the corner, and we did a project, the Regional Metro 2040 project, to look at, there are 500,000 people coming to town in the next 20 years or so. Where are they going to live? And why is that? And as the region, the four-county, two-state area that's the Portland metropolitan region, was looking at the growth forecast, the central city, the city of Portland, who I worked for at the time, wanted to capture 20% of the region's growth. We had a goal. We're going to capture 20% of the region's growth. So if 500,000 people are coming to the region, we want 100,000 of them within the city. And then you begin to, okay, which neighborhoods absorb the growth? And you begin to get heat, because everybody wants their neighborhood to be just the way it's always been, only better, but they don't want those people moving in. So one of the things we were looking at was where do we accommodate growth in places that people aren't going to gripe? The other thing that was happening was regional transit initiatives. We had invested heavily. We decided not to build the Mount Hood Freeway. We took the money from the Mount Hood Freeway and we invested it in the beginnings of the regional light rail system, and we began to build, first the Banfield line to Gresham on the east, and then the line out to Hillsborough on the west, and then we built to the north, and now light rail is everywhere in Portland. And the thing about light rail is that it serves a great function as a mover of people on a regional scale. And out on the suburban ends, we had park and ride lots and suburban village centers and the rest of that. But how do they move around when they're downtown? Because the notion of transit-oriented development is that you're able to walk a quarter to a half mile, depending on which philosopher you believe in the TOD world, to a transit station. So if you're not within a quarter or a half mile of that transit investment, are you benefiting from it? So one of the things that we wanted to do in the central city was put something in place that expanded the geographic impact of the regional transit investment. So two things there: regional growth, getting the downtown and the central city getting its share; regional transit, how do we maximize the investment for the people who are downtown? The Pearl District is an area, Burnside Street's on the bottom. If you divide Portland up north, south, east, west, the river, the Willamette River is the north-south divider, and then the east-west divider, and then Burnside Street's the northwest, or the north-south divider. So if you are north of Burnside and west of the river, you're in northwest Portland. If you're south of Burnside, east of the river, is like the Pearl District. The River District was the northwest quadrant of the central city. It was where Portland was founded. It was where Portland grew up. It was where Portland had essentially abandoned the northwest area. A huge part of the Pearl District was the Burlington Northern rail yards. And Burlington Northern had an obsolete back-the-trains-in kind of a rail operation that had sat fallow for years. And the train station where we used to have 5 tracks of passenger platforms, that was kind of down to a train a day, the Coast Starlight coming through. The old town was where the homeless were, Skid Row, all that stuff was down there. And people came back again and again and again to this vacant triangle. So, what can we do? And the city saw developer after developer that said, we're going to build 6 million square feet of Class A office in the Pearl District, or in this area, because that's where we're going to make all of our money. Now, the thing about transit-oriented development is you need public-private partnerships, and when you look at public, a lot of the public is people who are elected to represent folks like people who own property and people who own Class B and Class C office. So if you come in and propose to build 6 million square feet of Class A office, and, oh, by the way, I need the city's help to make that happen, the people who own the B and C office, the people that you're targeting to take all of their tenants away from them, they're not going to be particularly excited about the fact that you're coming to town. So proposal after proposal fell apart in the area that we call the River District. The ULI came in and did a RUDAT study. There was a Northwest Triangle plan, Glacier Park, which was the real estate arm of Burlington Northern. Plan after plan after plan that called for extending the downtown into this north area. And it wasn't going anywhere. And finally, we came up with the idea of, rather than competing with the downtown, why don't we complement it? What's the downtown need? The downtown needs workers. Oh, well, we want to absorb 20% of the growth in the region in Portland, and what better place to put growth than in a place where nobody's going to complain about it?
That's just when the
Everybody wanted to see the old rail yards redeveloped, so let's make that housing. So the thing that made the River District happen, two brilliant ideas that I have absolutely nothing to do with. One was complement rather than compete with the Central Business District. We've got commercial. What we
Audio,
need
you know.
is housing. What we need is people
You didn't know the
living
audio
in the
was all
downtown,
muffled.
creating a 24-hour-a-day community.
Oh.
The other neat thing about the district is there was a bend in the Willamette River, and the street grid, both the north-south streets and the east-west streets, they all terminated at the river, which was kind of cool. It was unique to that part of town. So the people that put the original idea together called it the River District.
Yeah, but
And the River District was designed to have several neighborhoods, the Union Station neighborhood where the old railroad depot was, the Pearl District, which was the old warehouse district, an area we called Tanner Creek, which was the rail yard, up at Terminal 1, a port facility. So all of these different neighborhoods. Now, what happened was the realtors and the marketing types really liked the Pearl. So it expanded and became, when you talk about this whole area of the downtown now, everybody calls it the Pearl District. So, the idea of the land use and transportation connection we were looking at here was we wanted to have people, not their cars. We wanted to have great external connections, and we wanted to have internal circulation. One of the things about redeveloping the center cities as opposed to sprawling on the suburban edge is that it helps your economy more. You get more bang for the buck, and if you go to our website, you can see a lot about that. And it's also good fiscal policy because we had the water lines and the sewer lines and the streets and the electrical systems. I mean, this was a great old warehousing district. We had water lines set up for industrial fire flow. All the streets had 20-inch water mains in them. We didn't need to build any infrastructure to bring the housing in. Now, we needed to rebuild some of it, but it was a lot cheaper. So coming in with people versus cars, one of the things that we looked at and one of the things that my team was challenged with is if we bring in 15,000 people, 5,500 plus units, are we going to be overwhelmed by their automobiles, or are we going to provide them choices that make it a livable place? And we've developed a place, when you look at the Pearl now, the majority of the transportation mode split is non-auto. Now, in Portland as a whole, the regional auto share is in the high 80s, low 90s, like most places. But in the Pearl, it's less than 50%. So there are people biking and walking and taking transit as opposed to driving the car. And it's because we created these great external connections to the rest of the region and the rest of the world, and we created a great internal circulation system. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Here's part of the great internal circulation system. Zip cars. Zip cars are really cool. I live in Billings, Montana now, and I wish we had Zipcar because then my wife and I would have one car instead of two. The neat thing about Zipcar is you sign up for it, and it's there when you need it, and when you don't need it, you're not paying for it. And you can choose zippier kind of Zipcar depending on what you're doing. If you're going to go play, you can get a convertible. If you got work to do, you can get a truck, and everything in between. We brought that to the Pearl, and a lot of people who live in the Pearl don't own a car. They have a membership in this, and when they need a car, they rent it by the minute. We also worked on wayfinding. It's very important to be able to find your way around, and the wayfinding system is great. Lots of clutter on the street, but that's okay too. Another thing we worked on was keeping the street grid. One of the things that happens is, the development community, just like the public sector, the development community is looking for efficiency. And if you can assemble a bunch of land into a super block, we did a lot of super blocking back in the early urban renewal days. If you can develop one chunk of land, you've got one entrance and one building and one wall and cheap. So there was a lot of interest in doing that down in the River District over the course of its development. And we said, no, the street grid is going to stay. But we did put some of the grid in a pedestrian-only regime. And when we did that, we were able to narrow the right-of-way. One of the things that's really cool about Portland is that it's got a 200 by 200 block. Each block is 200 feet square. It's a small block. That was a bunch of thrifty and entrepreneurial New Englanders who founded the community, realized that corner lots sold for more than interior lots, so we wanted lots of corners. So that's why Portland has the small block structure. But the 200 by 200, when you start putting a mixed-use building on it, when you start looking at podium parking where you've got 4 and 5 and 6-story buildings with parking internal to it, the 200 by 200 doesn't work for internal circulation and the rest. So what we did is we took the 60-foot rights-of-way between those 200-foot blocks, and every other block we created a pedestrian street that's 40 feet wide instead of 60 feet wide. And we used that right-of-way, we gave that back to the adjacent property, and that made the circulation of the building work. So when you look at this, this is part of the street grid. You can see a block away, it's back into traffic and the rest of that, but it looks like a wonderful park. And when you get into it, this is the driveway for this building. And here's where they're parked down what would be the alley, and they've each got their little garage. And this is the driveway looking from where they come out of the alley and on down the street. Not a high-speed conveyance, certainly, but it works. And most of the time there aren't cars there, and people walk on it. Here's the driveway looking from the street. If you didn't live there, you wouldn't know it was there. And here's how the parking works under the building. The front of the building is commercial space. You can see the side of this modest little Bang & Olufsen store. Nothing too high-end in the Pearl. But when you put retail on the ground floor of a building that's 200 feet deep, retail doesn't need to be 200 feet deep. Retail needs to be about 50 feet deep, from the front door to the back of the space. So the parking goes in behind it, you clad it with retail in the front. Those were some of the things that we worked out, that we experimented with when we were putting the Pearl together. But it kept the internal circulation system whole while at the same time making development possible. Now the Central City Plan, I'm going to get into the streetcar part of stuff. The Central City Plan called for the development of these different districts of the city. This is the Pearl, this is the Central Business District, Portland State University, and the like. When we were in the Office of Transportation, what's the transportation response to this land use plan of connecting these centers? And we came up with the Portland streetcar, and we did a lot of I called the Nome to Key West. We're going to look big. We look really big at what a citywide streetcar system might look like. But then we decided that we weren't going to fall victim to the Nome to Key West syndrome, which is, we can't build any of it until we build all of it. Let's create a vision for the whole thing, get everybody bought in, and then let's agree that this is what we're going to do first. It's about a 4-mile loop. It was interesting hearing about the M1 rail. It's 2 miles end to end, 4-mile loop, whatever. This is the original alignment for the Portland streetcar from Northwest Portland through the Pearl District, through the Central Business District, terminating at Portland State University. When we put the streetcar together, we recognized that if it was going to happen, it was going to have to be economical to build and economical to operate. The regional system, the light rail system, the TriMet was taking all the federal money. We didn't want any federal money for our project. And we brought the business community together, and they said, well, you're going to have to build this with a business mindset. So we have some design principles that we used. It has to use available rights-of-way. We're not going to buy any land. We're going to limit the investment to the essentials. One of the things we did when we built the light rail system is we put the overhead power in, and everybody was worried about how ugly the overhead power was going to be. So they clad all of the power poles with this cast iron ornamental historic streetcar look. That made each of those poles $12,500 in 1980s dollars. We put in $750 poles, and we said, hey, if you want to put something on it, you bring the money to the table too. Don't just come in with ideas about how we should spend our money. Bring your money, bring some skin to the game. We wanted to use the extent we could off-the-shelf equipment. One of the real problems in the United States with streetcars and light rail and the rest is that we wind up building a brand new wheel every time. We reinvent the wheel in Portland, and we reinvent the wheel in Seattle, and every transit agency was designing a transit vehicle from scratch. at the cost of millions of dollars, and then doing a really low production order at a cost of millions of dollars, and then they go on to the next agency and do it all over again. We wanted to use off-the-shelf vehicles and operate the system in an efficient and safe and no-frills basis. We created private not-for-profit. Portland Streetcar Incorporated was put together in the early 90s to run the project. It was an interesting group. We went to property owners that were going to be affected by the potential project and asked them to be on our board. The City of Portland partnered with Portland Streetcar Incorporated. We had a citizens advisory group as well, and then a design and engineering team that I led, a public involvement, public-private initiative team, and that was how we made it all happen. So what's the attraction of the Portland Streetcar? We bought the vehicles from the Czech Republic, from a group called Inikon Škoda. They used to build the electric locomotives for the Siberian Railway. And their marketing plan in the bad old days was the commissar came to Pilsen and said, "You will build 1,000,000 or 1,000 of these, da?" And they'd say yes. And when we went to Pilsen, they were at 10% of capacity because the Iron Curtain had fallen, and the Czech Republic was in a world of hurt. They had incredible craftspeople who built these cars from scratch, and they built these cars at 40% of the cost of what Siemens and Adtranz, the German manufacturers, were charging. So we got some really cheap vehicles, and then over time we've created a capacity to build them actually in Portland. It serves central city districts. It's not all things to all people. It is a downtown circulator. It serves the neighborhoods adjacent to the downtown. It operates in mixed traffic. Cars drive on the tracks and across the tracks. It fits in urban districts. It turns the corners. We didn't have to take the corners out. It enhances public spaces. When we originally worked with Portland State University, they wanted us to come up and just like for a half a block touch the corner of the campus. But then when it became real, they said, bring it on. And it goes right through the center of their main square at a diagonal and really embraces that urban university. It fits in a multimodal street. This is my favorite transit stop and gas station up in Northwest Portland. And the bicyclists between the rails. I think I've got a picture of the don't get your bike caught in the tracks. That was one of the things we had to deal with. And for the M1 people, you want to put some signs up before people start getting stuck on the rails. We were able to share the stops with buses. The transit stops are essentially an extension of the sidewalk. It provides intermodal connections. There's the bike sign. It's coffee, it's hot. This is where we transfer between the streetcar and MAX. It's not your standard engineering solution. I'm a civil engineer. My dad's a civil engineer. My granddad was a civil engineer. I can make fun of engineers, but it's not your standard engineering solution. It's not just another pretty face. It's how I get my daughter in my slideshow. It's not just transportation, but it's a powerful tool for urban livability. The train runs frequently. It runs slow. Lots of people love to use it. It moves people, and it shapes places. This is the Pearl before, and that's after. So results. Since the mid-'90s, we've seen $4 billion in economic development adjacent to the streetcar alignment. 15,000 new residents, 50% plus non-auto mode split, and the city's affordable housing and urban design goals were achieved. One of the things the development community needed help with infrastructure. We were happy to provide the help, but in return we got the density we wanted, and we got affordable housing built into the project. So here's the Portland Development Commission, the Urban Renewal Agency, keeps a map of the projects that are going on. Here's the alignment of the streetcar. Look at where all the happening happened, right where the streetcar was. So here's some results. This is the very first building that went up in the Pearl back in 1992. It's a condo project, 18 condominiums. When it went on the market, it was in the Sunday paper. It was sold out on Thursday. There was demand for it. Public spaces, Tanner Springs Park, wonderful facility in downtown. This is the kind of housing we're getting now with the Pearl. Very different scale. When I got started with this project back in the 80s, the notion of building something over 3 stories was, it'll never happen. Never happened here in Portland. So from 1985 to 2005, we made this leap. So lessons learned. Leverage infrastructure investment to achieve your public policy goals. You're going to invest some money. Invest it in a way that gets you a return. Don't do what the little boy does where he mows your lawn and then he knocks on the door and asks for $5 or $20 or whatever mowing a lawn costs these days. Get the deal done in advance. Involve the business leadership of your community in creating a legacy. That people are interested in creating legacy. Engage them. And remember that people will pay to park. The way we paid for the streetcar project is we had downtown parking garages, and we had our board of directors bring the business community to the city council and say, we want you, city council, to raise downtown parking rates and use that revenue as a revenue stream that we can bond against to build the streetcar. And that's how we got it done. And then the on-street parking, we raised those rates and used it to subsidize the operation of the streetcar. So with that, I'll leave you my favorite quote. We have the freedom to make informed, humane, and intelligent choices about the kind of world we want to leave for our children and grandchildren. We also have the freedom to make uninformed, selfish, and stupid choices. So you guys are trying to figure out which is it going to be. I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.
Okay, do we have any questions? Wow, that was... Oops.
I just read that ridership last year was off a couple percent, maybe 3%. What happened?
The question was about ridership. The streetcar, when we originally did the modeling, was going to carry 4,000 to 5,000 riders. I was looking at M1 Rail 4 to 8. 4,000 to 5,000 riders was what was projected, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. But what they did is they added to the streetcar since the beginning. They extended it down into the Moody Street area, the south and west of downtown, and they extended it across the river. So there's a much bigger system. And as they put that system together, they did ridership projections for each of those elements of the system. And when they opened up a big chunk of it during an economic downturn, to put the vehicles out on as much track as they had in place at the time, they had to change the headways. And when they changed the headways, that affected ridership.
You mentioned that you got the initial streetcars in Europe, and then now you're producing them in Portland. Are other communities using them? Is it an ongoing viable business, the streetcar manufacturing?
People are listening online. The question is the Made in America streetcars. Yeah, United Streetcar exists. It's in Portland. They're having, the startup problems that a startup business has, but they build vehicles for Seattle and Tucson and other communities. They're having trouble keeping up with demand at this point. But yeah, one of the things when you start using federal money, the great thing about our original project, it was a 100% local project. So we didn't have to worry about some of the procurement provisions that you have when you touch a federal dollar. So when we started touching federal dollars, we needed someplace that built them in America. And the Czech manufacturers actually partnered with the business people in Oregon to create an American manufacturer.
Thank you. Is that slideshow available online, or do you have a copy of it?
I understand it'll be available as part of the conference proceedings, so you'll be able to. Yeah.
Any more questions?
No? Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.